Hey guys, what's going on? I'm David Avalon here with my co-host Robert Drysdale in another episode of Breaking the Guard. Today we have a very special guest, Drew Weathermore. Thank you very much. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. The name's Weatherhead. Everybody gets it wrong the first
Weatherhead.
time, so you got your one
Oh.
out of the way. It's okay.
I was just gonna say, I think pretty sure you said
I
no.
saw
Good
Rob's
job.
face.
I know there's something. When it came off my lips, I'm like, "There's something wrong," but let's go with it.
Hey,
My bad.
it's a pleasure to have you, Drew. It's been a
No,
minute.
thanks. Thanks for bringing me on, guys. I've really been enjoying your podcast, so it's a real treat to get on myself.
Awesome. Drew was affiliated with us. He was on the team, what, 5 years ago when you were purple
Yeah,
belt?
yeah, for a couple years. That's right.
You were a purple belt, right? I think
That's right. Yep,
yes. And he's in Red Deer in
in Alberta.
Alberta, way up there, man.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But Drew has been like for those of you who don't know Drew, he is the mind behind BecauseJitsu, one of the most popular pages on the internet as far as like memes and
Yeah.
jujitsu. How else would you describe it? Like, is it just
That's
jujitsu culture?
Yeah, it's basically everything satirical about jujitsu. So I poke fun at a lot of goofy shit that happens, and I really vibe with what you've been doing, Rob, with the uncovering of jujitsu lore as it opposes to history, because that's half of the funny things that I like to poke fun at is all of the nonsensical parts that people like to sort of brush over with culty language, and it's so easy to make fun of because they can't say anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I always say this, like we did talk about this before, but like through humor, you can actually say it's an easier way to say things if you're making fun of them,
That's
right?
right.
If you're serious, like you watch Chappelle, if you watch Chappelle's last stand-up, Sticks and Stones, I don't know if you guys saw it or not.
I've
I
seen
haven't
pieces.
not.
You have to. It's probably
Okay.
his masterpiece, but he's constantly pushing that cultural boundary of what you
Hmm.
can and can't talk about. He's on the frontier of what's acceptable. Even for me, and I'm a pretty open-minded guy, a couple of times I'm like, damn man, that's pushing it all. That's a little too much, you know. But I think
Yeah,
that
there's
with
there's a
comedy,
certain
you get away with it.
there's a certain level of art where you can say something that somebody shouldn't laugh at, but they have to.
Yeah.
It's definitely a very, especially nowadays, I think that line is very blurry as far as
Yeah,
how far
every
you can
day.
go before you offend somebody, you
And
know?
not only that, you could ruin your career too, because if you really get, Chappelle was always picking on the transgender people, for example, and he's like constantly pressing that button. It's like, man, they're gonna fight back, like, but he just gets a kick out of it, I think, But I like what you're doing because it does. I think it's a sign of growth of the sport as well. The fact that you have accounts that are just exist, perhaps not with the sole purpose, but with the main purpose of making fun of ourselves, right?
Exactly. Exactly. We
Yeah.
got to we got to take ourselves lightly every now and again because too many people take ourselves seriously, you know?
I think to me, yeah, what's very interesting about all this is the whole concept of the meme.
Hmm.
It seems like this should have come out like much longer ago than it
Yeah.
did, but like I think that for most people, the meme is a very new thing, but it's so simple. It's just a picture
With a
and a
caption on it.
caption.
Yeah.
This could have been done like when the internet started,
Yeah.
but for
Yeah.
whatever reason, it took like over a decade before like it actually caught steam. And I think like Instagram probably helped
Sure.
fuel it because it was just a picture
I
engine at first.
think it was Instagram that really got the ball rolling. But you know what the word meme comes from? It's not what we call meme is not the original meaning of the word.
No,
The
it's
word
a Dawkins
meme,
word.
it's a Dawkins word. You're right. Dawkins coin and memes are for culture what genes are for the body. So memes are like these, superposed like cultural ideas that we live with, and they live on to the next generation just like genes do. So like religion, would be a meme. That's how he looks at it, right? And for some reason, social media borrowed that word from Dawkins. It has nothing to do with
Hmm.
Dawkins' original concept, but it kind of caught on. That's what memes mean now. They mean something completely different.
Yeah, it's a bit of a incorrect nomenclature. If you look online, the official term is internet meme, and they differentiate meme in general. So like you're saying, a meme is considered like an idea seed. So something that
Yeah.
seeds a concept into people that passes on from one person to another. And the
Yeah.
internet meme is basically like the cartoon version of that. So we definitely
Yeah.
pass ideas. Like I take a little bit of evil joy every time that I make a meme that becomes part of the culture. Like a lot of the things in the leg locks that have happened over the last few years, like some of the wording around that, we've made it super popular. And that is the idea seed part of the comedy. So like there's actual changes that happen in the what do you call the zeitgeist, I guess, of jujitsu.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. No, I'm with you, man. I think that's it's entertaining too. Like I can
Of
get lost
course.
every now and then. You go on your explore page. I don't do this very often. Sometimes next to like 30 minutes have gone by and I'm just looking at funny pictures. It's highly addictive, and it's like I think that's a positive side of the social media people neglect is the humor.
Hmm.
There's the addiction and the creeping on people's lives and all that bad stuff, and it takes too much of our time. But as far as humor, I think the world has never been funnier in some ways. Like like I don't know, like before you had to retell a story, right? If you remember, if something funny had happened,
Right.
you just pull up video after video after video, like it's never ending. Like the other day, I posted a video of like I think it was like a lioness pulling guard on a. Well, she was fighting some other animal. I can't remember what animal it was, but she basically pulls guard, and then it looks like she's pulling guard. The other animal gets on top, and then it bites its neck from the bottom. It looked
Yeah.
like a jiu-jitsu fight. I watched that video like 20 times. I thought it was
Yeah, that
incredible. She
was
pulls
like a
guard in a fight.
wildebeest or something.
Yeah, but like you don't get that. I mean, the internet gives you all of that. It comes with bad, but it comes with a lot of good too.
Hmm. Well, that's part of the addiction quality to it. Nobody would keep coming back to it if it wasn't entertaining or engaging in some way. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
driving feature. We were talking just before we went live here about the documentary. What's the one called? The Social Dilemma that's going on
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Dave hasn't seen it yet. I keep
I'm
telling him.
not.
I think that the social dilemma thing, it's something we all know. We're all aware of it. We're just in denial about it because we're having too much fun. It's kind of like we'll deal with that problem. We know it's a problem, but it's such a fun problem, right? Because
Mm,
we're all addicted to our phones. And the disturbing part is that, they know you better than you know yourself. You
yeah.
have, if I ask you to list down like 20 of your personality traits, you get lost. After 6 or 7, you start struggling. Google and Instagram and Facebook, they have like hundreds, if not thousands, of
Hundreds.
personality traits because they know what you like. They look how long you like it for. They know how
Yep.
long you're staring at an image and they're timing that. They're timing how long you're staring
Yeah.
at an image. And that allows them to better, push advertisement on you, which is, I think that their goal really isn't an evil one per se, other than making money. I don't think
Hmm.
there's anything evil beyond just finding out better ways of making more money faster through our attention, right? But at the same time, I'm bothered why. Like I went to someone's house the other day and they had an Alexa, and I couldn't stop thinking like Alexa's listening and recording everything we're talking about right now,
Yeah.
which to me is disturbing. That part bothers me more than the fact that they're just going to send me ads that are more specific to my likes. Honestly, I kind of like that because I don't want to go through every item on
Hmm.
Amazon to find what I really need. I prefer if they just send the stuff that I'm actually interested in my way, so I spend less time shopping. It makes sense. But it's that the privacy is the part that bugs me. Like that's the part that I'm completely against. Like, I think in the US, like this huge movement for Second Amendment rights, which I'm like, okay, I think there's an argument there. I get it. And there's complete silence over the fact that we have no privacy. I'm like, wait a second. Talking about freedom here, one is way more important than the other. Like our
Hmm.
privacy, it should trump everything, in my opinion.
Well,
Right? Some people
where are you getting the idea that nobody cares about that? It's
about
from
privacy.
yeah, it's like where do you get your news? You get it from social media or you get it from the TV. So those are already being filtered and siphoned for you. So
Yeah.
if you think nobody's worried about it, it's because they don't want you to think anybody's worried about it.
Yeah, and it's you get quickly manipulated in this
Sure.
story. Like it's easy to get, and not only that, like they're very selective about what kind of information they push your way, and that's the other part that's
Hmm.
disturbing. And social dilemma talks about this a little bit, But it's the same with Google. Like certain topics, if you Google, you're gonna have to go page 6, 7 to find the right answer.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna throw. There's certain things. There's certain like topics that I've done this before as a test. They're more controversial. There's less within the spectrum of what's debatable and acceptable. You have to go page 6, 7 to find the answer you're looking for, because it's like they know that very few people will go on page 2. You're going to read our item from 1 to 5. So that to me it's a form of propaganda as well.
For sure.
It's just like, I'm not convinced there's an evil intent behind that, but at the same time, it makes us more ignorant in some ways, because information is very selective.
Yeah. Do you guys know the old AI analogy of the paperclip machine?
No, I don't.
So the idea, this was a thought experiment where somebody who created an AI, so like an artificial intelligence, where its only sole purpose was to create more and better paperclips. And with that intent in mind, they pressed the go button and it turned every piece of matter into a paperclip. So if you don't have enough guidelines around how to do the objective can itself become malevolent.
Yeah.
No, I think for sure with the whole Google thing with search engine filtering and whatnot, it's problematic because they are a business. So that, of course, they have to do things that generate revenue. And then when you start combining politics and ideologies and stuff like that, the censoring of certain voices or certain ideas that's going to help their business continue to thrive is going to become an agenda item at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're talking about, again, freedom of information that's no longer there because certain information is damaging to that particular company, So I don't know, it's very tricky, and companies like Google and Facebook have gotten so big, it's hard for competitors to step in, It's kind of like we think the UFC is a big dog in the sense that other sport organizations like Bellator and ONE FC are trying to step up, but like UFC is so giant. It's easy to perceive as a monopoly. Google is like a sun, and we have like little meteorites of other businesses that are trying to compare to, So it's staggering the scale.
It would take a catastrophe for Google to lose its spot in the world, its place in the world. Like I can't imagine what would have to happen for Google to lose its prestige. Because the other thing too is, like, for example, there's an advantage of like companies like Tesla and Amazon having a CEO who's become a public person like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. But there's a lot of risk that comes to that because it takes one scandal to ruin the whole company. In
Does
the case
it though?
of Google,
because Elon Musk loves his scandals. He's
but like I'm
wrecked his own stock just to bring it back up.
Like, yeah, but I think that these are just PR maneuvers. I'm talking about like he gets caught doing like beating his wife or something, right? And then that ruins his company. Whereas with Google, I can't name a single person that's that's influential in Google. Like Google is like its body of itself. It doesn't really, they don't expose themselves. Maybe that's for the better. I don't know, but I just don't see them losing that position ever. I can't see how.
Well, you want to talk about the zeitgeist of people online. When's the last time you've heard somebody say, I'm going to search that? They say, I'm going to Google it.
Yeah. No one says the word search is not even in the vocabulary. You're right. Yeah. They're going to Google it, even if they're using a completely different kind of a, even if I'm searching in my email or whatever, it's like, I'm Googling it. I'm not searching it.
Yeah, that's a big win on their end.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, Drew, I know you've been your partner on you guys got a podcast through the Naked Radio. I've been on there. Jamie Kilstein, those of you who don't know Jamie, he's a stand-up comic, super cool guy. How'd you guys get together, man? Because I've known Jamie since, I don't know, maybe 7 years now, 6 years. Can't remember how I met him, but we go way back.
Well, I'll get into how I met Jamie in a sec, but I'm not part of the podcast anymore. I actually stepped off about a month ago just to focus on my own jiu-jitsu stuff. I got a lot of other things going on that was kind of taking up the time, but man, Jamie's a great guy. He's a brown belt under Marcelo Garcia. I knew him as a stand-up comic actually before I knew he did jiu-jitsu. I saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast a couple times. And I don't know, the name was in my head. I'm like, he's a cool dude. And then I just happened, we had some sort of weird interaction online where he was commenting on something I was commenting on. Then all of a sudden, like, oh, hey, it's Jamie Kilstein. So we started talking in the DMs, and he was talking all about jiu-jitsu and how he loves it so much. And yeah, he was at a point where he wanted to really get into the jiu-jitsu culture online. And he's like, do you want to do a podcast? I'm like, yes, I want to do a podcast. And that was about all. So we did that for like 10 months, like straight every week.
That was good, man. I listened to a few episodes. You guys got some really cool guests there.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this, because you've been in this like jiu-jitsu media world for a while now, Drew.
Mhm.
Give me some stories. I bet you got some good stories of people talking shit to you or some hate, because you're gonna get hate mail, man. Give me some of your like top three, like either through the podcast or through the BecauseJitsu page.
Okay. To be honest, it's probably less than you would expect because as big as the page is itself, for the most part, for like 90% of its existence, it didn't really have a face on the admin, the same way you're talking about with Google. So it wasn't like if I put an opinion out there, it wasn't necessarily Drew's opinion. It was just like this funny meme. So if I was like shitting on AJ Agar's arm one day, not necessarily he's gonna get in an argument with me in the comments, and I definitely do shit on him from time to time. But there
He's
have
an
been
easy, sorry, I don't. He's not a difficult one. I like it. Yeah.
There was one point where I pissed off Kenny Florian because I was picking on AJ. I guess they're friends. And it was the point when Wagner Hocha kicked him off the stage in a super fight.
Okay.
Yeah, and I memed it of like a slow-mo of him being kicked off the stage, and Wagner was Monday, and he was kicking me off the stage, like I'm getting my ass kicked by Monday kind of thing. And yeah, Kenny got all mad about that, and there was this blow up. It was kind of weird. But probably the strangest thing, swear to God, this happened. This isn't even a joke. Is for a jujitsu meme page, I've actually had somebody send me a legitimate dick pic for no reason.
Oh,
No reason at all.
interesting.
Imagine this is the first thing I wake up in the morning and I check my messages in the DMs and I go into the requests. I'm like, huh, I wonder what this is. It says there's an image. And you know how like you click on a request when it shows like a blurred image? It's like tap the image if you want to see the image. Like, I wonder what the image is. It's probably a meme somebody's sending me or an idea for a meme. And nope, just a dick. I'm like, how screwed up do you got to be? How bad is the dating world that you got to throw like an unsolicited dick pic to an account that has no face on it?
You don't have to say anything, but I would guess it's Kit Dale. Just throwing it out there.
There's a good chance. There's a high probability of this kid.
Throwing that net out wide.
It's a numbers game, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a funny one.
Oh man, that's funny. Man, because like there's no way out of it, man. You're gonna upset someone, at some point, and people are gonna talk shit. I laugh it off. Like I used to take it more seriously. Now I just like I go along with the trolls. Like every now and then I'm like, all right, bring it.
I think it's funny that you could have someone following your page or any other meme page and laugh at a bunch of stuff. And then when something comes across, they're like, oh, no, now you've gone too far. It's like, dude, you laughed at all this other crap. But then this one thing you're going to take offense to, it's like, I don't know, for me, what you guys were talking about being able to laugh at yourself. And I think as part of the martial arts, one of the things that we're supposed to have is humility, right?
Exactly.
And I think being able to laugh at yourself, even at things that you might be sensitive to, which is your own problem. It's not, it's not somebody else's problem. It's your problem that you still really haven't, like you can accept things about yourself and then you can laugh about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People who haven't accepted those things, they get angry when they see that mirror, which is kind of what humor does. It puts a mirror there, and if you're not strong enough to look at it and laugh, I think that's on you, not on the guy showing you the mirror.
100%. Like it's like someone talks shit to you and you get offended. You're the one with the problem, not the other person.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like you got either the new guy or the newer guy in the gym, and they don't know their weakness yet, and then like you sweep them 50 times with the same thing, and they're like, they get mad at it, they have a reaction, and sometimes some of those people don't want to find out how to fix that. And those are the people in the comments. Those are the people that are like, leg locks wouldn't work on me, bro, or not on the street, or I would, gouge your eyes, or, picking on their favorite fighter, and they start rattling off his whole career achievements. It's like, man, like this should be, like you're saying, a reflection on what your problem is.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking of which, I had to ask you because, I've seen like you're very prolific as far as like the amount of posts that you do, and I see other people who do the memes also like that. how do you do it? Because for me to think of something clever and funny, it would be like,
It takes me a minute. Yeah.
not a minute. A
Being
good,
generous to self.
a good day or
Hours.
so. Like, oh, I'm gonna get a good singer on, you know. But I mean, it's amazing that I always stand in awe when I see, man, this guy's posting like 5, 6 memes in one day, and they're all hilarious. You know, it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
how
a
do you
skill.
like? It's a skill. So I'm just wondering, like, for us common plebeians, like, how do you get there where you have such good creativity and you can just spot things like boom right away?
Well, this is something people ask me every now and again. I'm sure that there's a skill to it, and I'm sure I could show you a few tricks, but like really it doesn't seem hard to me, which is weird. So I guess there must be something to it, like a talent of some sort that I didn't know existed, because it's never really been that difficult. But my process generally is I'll find a picture first, and it's just something about it is like, okay, there's definitely something there. How can this apply to jujitsu? And really, like, having been in it for 13 years now, I've seen and heard enough of all of the different tropes and things in the zeitgeist of jiu-jitsu and in training and in how people think and talk that the jokes become pretty obvious when I see the pictures.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, I remember the one with like Wagner Hosha and AJ again. And I don't know if it was you, but like it had like it was playing with that 300 quote that goes like, "This is
Right.
Sparta," and it goes, "This is Tampa."
Yeah, there you go. It just writes itself
Was that you?
sometimes.
Was that you or no?
No, that one wasn't me. No.
Yeah, that was great, man. That was so good. There's some other really good. I think this one was you. There was one with was like it was like making like shitting on like IBJJF advantages, and the guy's missing the plug. Was that you? He's
Yeah.
like putting it into the walls, like almost there, like almost, you know.
Yeah. The almost technique. What is it worth,
Almost
really?
technique. Yeah. No, man, it's no, it does take a skill because I'm like that. Like I every now and then I'll have a moment. I'm like, oh man, that'd be a good meme. But like I guess if you're in his industry, if you're doing what he's doing, like your mind is constantly looking for things. Like you're always on the lookout for
Yeah.
like what could potentially be something that's going to entertain the public.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And again, it's probably background noise to me at this point. It just sort of just happens. You just see it and it happens. I got, if you don't mind me switching topics on you here, is one of the things I was excited because David, this is the first time I've actually met you. I've known of you for a very long time because of your Kimura trap and ADCC and all that. So I've been a fan, been following you for years. Nice to meet you officially.
Yeah.
One thing now that the three of us have in common that for me is semi-new, it's been like the last 3 years or so, is I've been focusing a lot on the instruction side of jiu-jitsu. And I know that that's something, obviously, with your Kimura trap, you have a lot of experience. And obviously, Rob, he's been leading an entire affiliation basically for years. I'd like to get into that topic with you guys, like the
Sure.
difference between doing jujitsu and teaching jujitsu, because I think this is a subtle thing that a lot of people don't understand until they have to do it.
Yes, it's definitely a skill, and I think all of us have known guys who are great competitors, but they couldn't show you anything, you know, because
Hmm.
they're good at absorbing knowledge, but they're not as good as
Yeah.
delivering knowledge. And it's not even the fact of knowing teach, it's knowing how to teach.
Exactly.
So it's a whole other skill set, you know, and I think that's the difference between your top competitor versus your top coach.
Yeah.
It's rare where you have both. You got a guy like Rob, you know, who's like, he's got it all going on. He's an excellent instructor. He's also an excellent competitor. But I find that if you can tie the both in, it makes you, because one of the things I know personally, I got better at teaching. I mean, I'm better at competing the more I taught because
Yeah.
I was able to understand techniques at a higher level because some people can absorb a technique and only understand it on a superficial level. Like maybe I understand it and I could do it myself without problems. But
Mhm.
when I have to teach it, I might have that same level of understanding and try to pass it to Rob, but he doesn't get it. I have to go another level deep. And by going another level deep, maybe I get to him, but I also learn some new nuggets into that particular technique that elevates mine. Like now, like, oh, I can leverage this more than ever. Like I know, like one of the things I teach a lot for like the Kimura trap system and all that is shoulder pressure, right? Like topside Kimura, a lot of people, and I see it's still taught where they just sit up and pull, and you could see that guy's upper body from the bottom come up.
Right.
And that, to me, if I see that, I know that guy's missing something, because that's the shoulder relieving pressure whenever someone crunches up like that. So if I'm able to keep shoulder pressure when I apply that Kimura, now there's no relief. So the tap becomes instant. And that's a little nugget that I figured out that now makes that move a whole lot more effective. And there's tons of them out there.
I think that they influence each other, to be honest. So I think I became, because you can be a phenomenal athlete and execute all these techniques and not have a clue of what you're doing, right? And then you can be a guy who breaks it down, but perhaps has a more limited arsenal or understanding because he's trained very little in his life, right? So, and then the guy gets away with, maybe because he's got other qualities, puts his heart and soul into it. But I think like that, the combination of both is important. Like, I think I was fortunate enough, like we were part of a generation. A lot of the young competitors don't get this stat. It's good and bad because we had to teach to make a living. Whereas if you're Bushesha, you don't have to teach to make a living. You're fine. You can make enough from sponsors. You can just train twice a day, and that's all you have to do. But it was like an exercise of like trying to better understand the move for yourself, and consequently, you did a better job at explaining it to your students. And I think that's something that's lost. Like I do at my gym, I have a new program. It's an internship for all colored belts. It's mandatory at my gym, right? And I've been trying to push the affiliations to do the same thing, because I think people benefit from it. But for you to get your black belt or zenith, you have to have taught 60 classes to beginners, either children or white belts. Because if some people are like, oh, that means I'm going to work for 60 hours for free. I'm like, yep, that's exactly what it means. It's an internship, because when you become a doctor, you don't just get a degree after school. You actually have to have some practice.
Yeah.
Like we have to start looking at fighting the same way. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's a skill. You'd be surprised. I thought my brown belts have 3 stripes on their brown belts. They trained for 10 years. You throw them in, go teach this white belt, his first class. You'd be surprised, they freeze. Yeah. This guy's one step away from a black belt, freeze, like he's never taught before.
Yeah.
He's never taught, he has no idea what to do. So I make my guys teach, and once they get the hang of it, they actually enjoy it. At the end, they're like, oh man, thanks for that. Because I'm walking out of here with a skill that I would have not walked out of here with, if I had just gotten my black belt and nothing, with no teaching experience.
Yeah, that's right. It's coincidentally, that's something that I've been instituting myself in my own gym. So since we've reopened after our first shutdown, we've gotten to 10 adult classes a week, 5 in the weekdays in the afternoon, 5 in the evenings. And as it stands right now, the afternoon classes, if there's a color belt in it, the ranking color belt is the one in charge of teaching the instruction for that class. I'm still there. They can ask me questions if they need to, rattle stuff off me. But my objective is I expect my color belts to be able to start verbalizing what they know. And I don't expect them to teach all of jiu-jitsu, but I'm like, you're good at least 1 or 2 things better than the people in the room. Like you have a game, you have a thing that you do. Explain that now in words. And that's talent. I found having to teach now myself, I think about this a lot. I really put a lot of thought into the verbiage that I use so that I can make it as easy as possible to come from my mouth to somebody's brain and have it stick. There's like a certain balance of words you use, how many words you use, what you focus on specifically. If there's one core thing you need them to understand for this thing, and just having to do that class after class after class sort of whittles down, just like training jiu-jitsu, it whittles down the path of least resistance.
No, 100%. I like the I think everyone should teach at some point, man. Like I think it's a skill you get better at. Like I still find myself improving as a teacher. It's been almost 20 years that I've been teaching, and I still find like I'm not done learning. I still get a kick out of it. I've been recently teaching beginners, and I used to hate teaching beginners. I've been teaching beginners class at the gym now, and I found like I really enjoy explaining an armbar from mount to someone. And it sounds like, oh, that's so simple. How could you enjoy that? And I used to hate it because it's so simple. Like, how can you not know this? This is so obvious, But I enjoy it because I get feedback from the white belt that I don't get from my color belt. So when I teach a De La Riva sweep for my purple belt, he's like, yeah, cool, whatever. And then there's no such thing as enough for that crowd. But for someone who just walked through the door, a mom, and she learns how to do a Kimura, she see the look on her face when she finishes some of the Kimura. She's so happy. She's so happy she learned her naked choke. And I get like, oh man, you're happy. Like I'm happy because you're happy now.
Yeah.
I'm getting a kick out of it that I used to not get. But I think it's it's people that don't teach are missing out on something. Like it's a very rich experience. I think it's your martial arts experience is overall impoverished if you don't teach.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Dave. You look like you're going to say something.
Oh, just that I do agree that it's part of the martial arts experience is the giving back,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
feel like myself when I started, uh, I would say wrestling was the first true. I did Jeet Kune Do for a year, but it was more like katas and stuff, and wasn't really the combative nature that, for example, wrestling gave me. But like even when I was wrestling, I was already starting to teach like buddies that weren't wrestling. Like I felt it just came very natural. I want to give, like this is doing good for me. Like
Hmm.
maybe it's gonna help you, and let me show you this. I think it's an important part that communication, going back and forth, and try to spread the art. Because ultimately, I mean, you know it better than us now with your book. But that's the goal: is to spread the art, get it
Yeah.
everywhere. You know what I mean? And if you're not doing your part in teaching, I mean, then the legacy can die
Yeah,
after after
Yeah.
it's a
you at
seed.
a
It's a
certain point.
plant. It lives its life and then it lays its seeds so that it
Hmm.
continues. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely make a living from what we're doing, but that's not why we're doing it. We do it because we're passionate, and it has kind of like a philanthropic feel to it, like you're giving something to people. Like this is something that's, depending on what you're teaching them, could be hundreds of years of knowledge has come down to the
Yep.
way that this is applied to the human body. That is real today as it was back then. But if people weren't teaching between then and now, where would it have gone? You know, it's left in hieroglyphics. You know.
Yeah.
This there's something here that Rob, you were touching on before about the difference between competitors that really know how to do it at a high level and instructors that know how to explain it at a high level. Something that I've been, like I said, I put a lot of thought into this. This is like my main focus right now is sort of like the meta of instruction, how best to do it, how best to make people get the most out of it. And I feel like the more I look into how to explain situations, concepts, ideas, game theory, it's is like most people when we're teaching and when I was learning, it's kind of step by step, technique by technique. You learn the 1 through 3 to get from here to there. The A through B, very linear progression. And you kind of have to not overload somebody at first. But then if that's the only system that you've been learning from, by the time you get to black belt, um, like I would say that 20% of what I do in a given role is conscious. And I would say 80% of what I do is unconscious. And I think that that's a travesty if you don't understand the 80%. So this is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to understand with each of these transitions, with each of these positions, is what am I subconsciously doing that I learned kinetically while doing this for years and years that maybe I don't even know is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely where a lot of the gains in the game will lie is on that unconscious, like you said, because you just do it.
Yeah,
But and that's what an athlete, like a elite competitor, will do. He just does things, and he does
that's
them at
right.
a really, really high level. But he doesn't have to question it, particularly if he's successful with it. But that doesn't mean that he's mastered it. Like there could be more in that space, and that's kind of where I think instruction has its benefit because your unconscious effort would be someone's conscious effort, and they're going to ask you like, "I'm doing this wrong," and you're like, "Well."
That's right.
Sometimes you have to get in there like, well, let me show you. And then like when you're doing it, you're like, oh, this is the part that this guy's getting snagged on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I can I can make this now, like you said, consciously available to me and
Yeah.
then amplify it and make it better. So
Yes.
for sure, because I feel like I have probably more experience in this than a lot of people because seminars is always the same seminar. It's always the more chop system. I've taught like hundreds of them. So I'm always teaching the same stuff. But what's awesome about it is I'm always teaching it to different people. And
Yes.
everybody and of all different skills. I've taught from like 5-year-olds up to like a 70-year-old, men, women, people missing limbs and stuff. So from white belt to black belt, belt. So I get to see like the whole range of skill sets and body types, and I could still boil everything down, and like I pull little pieces from questions that people ask me, and then I'm able to make a new
Yeah.
answer, so it becomes very powerful. But it's hard on like what you're doing is I believe is the right idea. Just look at yourself and do a roll and then think, okay, everything that I can't remember is a problem, right? Because if it just happened unconsciously. You know, for my brother and I in the early days, we would always film our sparring matches,
Okay.
and then we would watch the sparring afterwards, like particularly just to see, like, wait, what was that you just did?
Yeah.
You know, and then and break that down, you know, and then okay, now let's actually make this a move. I used to do this thing from the close guard, just do a cartwheel from the close guard,
Yeah.
and it would open the guard up. But like I was just doing it because I was a spaz, you know. And then it was only until reviewing video, like, oh, that's actually a thing I do. Okay, you know. And I have a bunch of moves like that. Probably my most successful move that I didn't even know until I watched video was what I call like a double leg slide. Remember, I took down Jeff Monson with this. I took down a bunch of dudes. But in my head, I always thought it was a single leg.
I didn't know you took out Jeff Munson, man. That's
Yeah, man,
that's an achievement.
That was
right
a
there.
count
Holy
of my
shit.
feather right there.
Because Jeff
That
was
guy's
one of
just-
like, the best wrestler. I mean, I'm not like at the ADCC level. He's one of the most successful wrestlers of all time. I mean, the history of the ADCC.
Yeah, back like this was like 2004, 2005.
He was
so
killing it back
He was still
then.
killing it there. But I remember I thought I took him down with a head inside single leg. But then when I went to review the match, I'm like, it was actually a transition. Like I actually slid on both knees, like doing a shot, but I would slide to both knees, and then it started off as a double, and then I slid all the way out. So then my head popped my side, and then it became a head inside single. And I realized that's why I burned everybody with that shot, because they thought a double leg was coming. They would sprawl, but then I would end up behind them.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know I was doing it until I
Yeah,
watched the video. And then I'm like, oh crap, now I can actually, make this better and understand what I'm doing. But
you know, it's like we have two separate brains. There's the conscious brain, memory, right? And then there's your body that just thinks by itself. And I always tell people, for the purpose of fighting, you want your body doing as much thinking as possible. Because if you have to consciously be aware of what you're doing, you slow yourself down, then your hesitation and your doubting. Versus if your body's just going on autopilot, you're always going to be faster and reacting, quicker. But as an instructor, you have to be able to do exactly what Dave was describing, which is analyzing all this movement that's going on that your body is responsible for, right? And you're not always aware of what you're actually doing. And that has happened to me more times than I can count, where I'm showing a move that I do, and while I'm showing, because my body is moving in a certain way, I go like, oh, and by the way, I'm shifting my weight on my left shoulder. I never realized I was actually adding a lot of weight on that shoulder. That's why the move was working. It was only when I taught that I made myself aware of it. We're going to the teaching thing, like, because you're talking about like how to teach and methodology.
Yeah.
One thing I always advise gym owners, because if you're only dealing with athletes, you have a room of like 20 athletes, it's actually easier because everyone in there is looking at the same thing and want the same thing. It's actually an easier methodology, right? But when you're in a class, what I always advise instructors, you have to look at the room. This is what I do when I teach seminars. I look at the average of the room. What is the average of the room? You get a bunch of moms, 2 athletes, or you get a bunch of athletes, 2 moms, right? And then we're going to go, where is it that I'm going to have my teaching? And you have to be able to read the room. And that's a very different skill that doesn't come without experience. Because if you don't have experience, you're going to go in there and show the room your best move, right? But that's not what the room wants.
Right.
So I'm trying to find, if I have a bunch of chubby people, I'm not going to show birimbolos, and you get these seminars, and it's hard at seminars because you get from white to black, old and young, advanced, beginner, you get all these different, variables. And like, how can I teach something that's going to make everyone happy? And that is a skill too. And that doesn't, because it's not necessarily a, because there's certain things that are universal, like rear naked chokes are universal, arm bars are universal, the kimura is universal. But there's some things, like it's because it's plain all the time, like people struggle doing certain things. And if you're showing that, the room is not approving it, and maybe you're getting a kick out of it, but if the room doesn't like it, are you a good instructor?
Yeah, there's a few self-defense seminars I've run for like CrossFit gyms. And one of the moves that consistently blows people's minds, which again, to your point, is hilarious from our point of view, is a technical stand-up. They love it. They're like, wow, that was so smooth. This is like a Turkish get-up. I understand this,
Yes.
And you plug that into a guard escape on bottom and getting back to your feet, like somebody who doesn't want to fight needs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the most basic part of jiu-jitsu, and their whole mind just gets blown.
You know where the technical stand-up comes from, though? I just learned this recently.
I just learned this from your podcast, so you go for it.
Yeah, comes from capoeira.
Uh,
It's a
That blew my
capoeira
mind.
book. Yeah, BJJ absorbed the technical stand because capoeira used to be a lot more MMA oriented back in the day.
Mm,
But one of their ways of standing back up was kicking from the ground and on the way back, standing back up. So they
right.
would kick you off the technical stand up and then pull the leg back and stand back up. Because that's not judo. You've never seen a judo club that does the technical stand up.
Yeah, that blew my mind. But
Yeah.
once you said it, I was like, of course, it even looks like capoeira.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of the few. I mean, one of the many. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. Like there's teaching is an art, man. Like I'm still in love with it, man. Like I still
Hmm.
enjoy teaching because I feel like much like grappling, it's never ending. Even though
Yeah.
like as a grappler, my body, I have like so many miles left in my body. I have to manage those miles. That's kind of how I look at it now. Like I got X amount of miles left. I want to manage them intelligently, right? But teaching is something I know
I think
forever.
that's an intelligent way to manage it right there. And I think that like you would know this more than anybody because of all the red belts you talked to in the last few years, is that is the most that an elderly person who does jujitsu can give somebody is the knowledge they've gained over decades of doing it.
And like one thing, it's something that we don't value
Hmm.
because I mean, when I was a kid, there was a thing that I work for a generation when people are like, listen to your elders. Like that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a thing anymore. No one listens.
No.
Old man, shut
Now
up.
they say, okay,
And
boomer.
and when I'm talking to these guys, right? And then yeah, they can't show me moves. Like he showed like one time I was getting corrected on my guillotine defense, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure my guillotine defense is better than his. But like I'm not gonna say that, of course. But like it was not that you get out of it. You get this life wisdom, man. Like you sit
Yeah.
down with these guys, they've been through everything you're going through, and they know what the answer is. Like
Hmm.
that's some legit knowledge, man. It's just we don't value it anymore. But like while I'm with them, I'm always constantly trying to pick their brains and like learn something because your grandpa does have a lot to teach you. It's just that we decided to listen to Tony Robbins and Gary Vee instead. But your grandpa's way more experienced than both those guys put together, and he
Yeah.
does have a lot to teach you. But we just don't, we just don't pick their brains enough. I don't
Yeah,
think.
you don't ask, right? My one grandpa was a war veteran in the Second World War. He was on, yeah, he was in the Navy, and
Imagine the
he.
stories.
This is the thing is I was young when he died. Like I was no 8 or 9 years old, but there was a couple times when I went over to his place, and I didn't ask to know about stories, but he asked if I wanted to go to the War Museum with him. And so I remember one time specifically I went to the War Museum with him and I'd never been. I was like, "Oh, cool, we're going to see some planes and bombs. Sounds like fun." So he takes me down and I'm sort of wide-eyed looking around at all of these little displays that they have. And I knew that my grandpa was in the war. That didn't really mean much to me at that age. I was like 7 years old.
Yeah.
But I remember walking along like a 15, 20-foot long torpedo replica. And I was running my hands along it and looking at all the components, just wowing and wooing over this thing. And then I looked over to my grandpa, and I'll never forget the look in his face. It was like 1,000 miles off. And he said, "This thing killed a lot of my friends." And there's
Oof.
some, yeah, there's
Yeah.
stories that we can't even comprehend of the people that we don't necessarily the time to get from them that could be life changing.
And I hear these stories and I imagine the suffering and the strength that has to come from that suffering from people like your grandfather. Because every day I have a bad day at the gym. Like someone forgets to pay with some bill or, some student complains. And that shit bugs me.
Hmm.
And then I hear stories like this one. Imagine what your grandpa went through. I mean, how you can't even begin. I mean, it's the strength that comes from that because we have never experienced anything like that. Imagine
No.
seeing your friends get blown up in front of you. Like,
Yeah.
it just I feel like I'm soft in comparison. It was a much tougher generation, and that should come with a lot of respect and appreciation. I
Yeah.
feel like, and I think that perhaps out of ignorance more than anything, we don't appreciate that in the elderly.
Hmm. Yeah, like you said, it's not in the culture anymore. It's we've become not only soft, but like sardonic. Like we look at everything with kind of a slant to it, like a little dark humor instead of the respect that it deserves. Like we are allowed to live soft because of the hard men for the last few hundred years
Yes,
who fought for
yes.
that.
Yep.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you a question, Drew, because
Mhm.
I know you're also a Kimura aficionado.
Yeah, I guess we got
Oh
the
yeah.
two popular Kimura guys on the same podcast now. This is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's funny because I have in my Kimura dresses, I have what I call a reverse Kimura trap.
Okay.
But I've seen some of the stuff you're doing, which is a different angle that I'm doing.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit how you got into the reverse Kimura game.
Sure. So this is definitely not something I created. I hate it when people say that I made this move. I'm not trying to say that, but what I did was basically what we were talking about. That like this was a grip essentially that I had used from time to time since I was a purple belt. I found a video of me playing around with it in 2011. So it's been like 9 years that I've been playing around with it. But I started putting some actual focus into it for about a year in 2018, between 2018 and 2019, where I was like, there's more here that I'm missing. That this is more than just like an avenue to the back, because basically people use it oftentimes from like a open or closed guard to essentially be an arm drag to get back exposure. But I started finding sweeps, I started finding submissions, I started finding transitions that all stemmed from the same start. So I put some actual effort into expanding that and not necessarily systematizing it, because I wouldn't it's a system, but I looked at it from as many different angles as I could and just sort of made this culmination into two different series. One is from the closed guard and one's from the half guard. And they have slight variations and differences, but essentially it's just it should be a versatile tool as far as a grip is concerned that I don't think people were getting enough use out of. So that's how that came about.
Cool. Well, no, I'm always a fan of anybody doing Kimura stuff. So
Yeah, you know what? I'll
I
send you a copy and you can check it out. I think there's some cool stuff in there. I'd love to see your take on it. Nice.
send two.
Nice.
No, I there's like a couple I do from that reverse Kimura. I don't have sequences. I have like that one to the omoplata, which I transitioned to, and then the bicep slicer. Those are the two ones I
Yeah.
use all the time, really. I've been using more and more in the last few years, but like I don't have a whole bunch of sequences there. So yeah, I'm always like looking at like different ways of using old tricks and like adding
Mhm.
new tools to it. That's like it's never ending, is it, man?
Yeah, well, it's just
Like
it's like the Hubble
when
telescope.
are you done? There's no end to this. It seems like.
You know, you can point the Hubble telescope at something that looks like the size of a pin in outer space and just let it sit there for a number of days, and it will pull enough light to show you galaxies you didn't know existed. It's kind of the same thing. We're never going to see
Yeah.
all the galaxies because there's so many to focus in on.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've gotten a better appreciation of the scale of the universe. I don't know, you guys. I remember, I think it was me or maybe my girlfriend. She had mentioned that they had these video games, or computer games that were like the biggest, like game world
Okay.
in like all time. And the one that popped up was called a game called Elite Dangerous, which is sci-fi space like plane,
Hmm.
but essentially it's the size of the galaxy, of the Milky
Yeah.
Way galaxy. It contains the whole Milky Way galaxy, and it's like procedurally generated. So like it has all these planets and
Oh my
stars.
God.
And I loaded it up, played it, and just like you could do like these. It's actually like very scientific. Apparently, they got like astrophysicists to help them do the modeling and all that,
Yeah.
Oh my.
and whatever they got. But you can travel in the game like light speed, like going like 40 times the speed of light, and you're there. And after like an hour, you've only traveled across like maybe like 10
Yeah.
solar systems, you know.
Yeah.
And when you look at the map of the game, it's like you're here, and then this is just one quadrant of this galaxy, and the galaxy is like this. And when you're flying to the thing, it's just all space around you, and
Yeah.
you see like a giant sun and stuff like that. And you're like, man, like I would have to play this game for like my whole life, and then hand it down to my grandkids so they can keep trying to explore this whole.
Because you can't
Yeah.
get
Yeah,
to
because I
the
guess
end.
they say in
Yeah.
the stats of the game world, only like 0.8% has been explored.
Of
Wow.
course. Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
real time aspect, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was, to me, it was like fascinating. I'm like, imagine you were able to create this, and nobody. Chances are, people are never going to see the whole thing, which is just
Hmm.
bizarre.
I don't like to say that life is insignificant. So insignificant is not the word I'm going to use, but we're pretty small in the grand scheme of things. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
we're just, this little, talking species on the edge of a small galaxy. But it's kind of like, it kind of puts you in place too. Like I like it, but it's the same time it's kind of disturbing. I would like to believe that we are the center of the universe, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's the case.
It's
Especially
probably a
within
safer
each.
way to think. It's too big for our brains otherwise, and you'll start getting depressed.
Yeah, there's an edge there, what we can understand.
Yeah. Th-
Absolutely.
There's something I wanted to leave on. I know you're probably running out of time here, so I want to get this in because the topic of instruction. And again, I really respect you guys for what you've done. You're an inspiration, and I pull a lot of motivation and inspiration from both of what you guys have done and are doing. My objectives, the thing that kind of pushes me, because I said like my focus is really, really, really on teaching and conveying information to people now. That's really my passion about jujitsu. Like I could give a shit how many more medals I ever win. This is what really matters to me right now. Um, do you know what epistemology is?
Yeah, study of
Yeah.
knowledge.
That's right. Yeah, I took a dictionary definition here so I won't get it wrong, but it's the theory of knowledge, especially with regards to its methods, validity, and scope. Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguish justified belief from opinion. And that is kind of like my guiding arrow to try to find what is true in jujitsu, that 80% that I'm unconsciously doing. What am I doing? Why is it working? Does it work? Could it be better? And trying to find like these big things that can consciously make somebody's game better faster.
That's huge, man. That's huge. Like it's finding like the best. I honestly don't think that, in the jiu-jitsu world that we have really narrowed it down to an ideal system because we train very differently from wrestlers and judokas, and I wonder
Yes.
why if they're not doing it right and we're all doing it all wrong. And sometimes I tell myself, well, there's more impact in judo and wrestling. That's why they drill so much and there's less live action, for example, right? But I don't know, man. Like I'm doing the same thing. I've been in a process of refining my teaching methods for as long as I've been teaching, and I'm still tweaking it. Like I still
Yeah.
do more of this. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what works best. That once again, looking at the class that you have, like who are you teaching right now, right?
Mhm.
But you're right, man. Like it's I think that's part of the job too. Is to perfect that. Is to be constantly sharpening that tool and not be like, oh, I'm done. This is the teaching method that my teacher taught me, and this is how I'm going to hand it
Yep.
down. Because then there's no more evolution. There
No,
has to
nothing interests
be.
me less than people that teach like that.
You got to be tweaking. I mean, you got to be adapting, selecting, and perfecting. And I think the whole community is better off that way. That's one thing about BJJ that like for all. I mean, comparing it to judo, I think judo has been more fixed in its canon over the years.
Yep.
Whereas BJJ, and I talk about this on my book, like I call it the culture of open software. And that's what it is. There's no curriculum. Like people didn't even have a curriculum until a few years ago. People started writing stuff down because it was all about what works for you and how you're going to change this and how you're going to make it
Yeah.
better. It was very open for all to tweak. And I think that's probably one of the most endearing qualities about jiu-jitsu is that it is open for everyone to modify.
Hmm.
And I think the problem with teaching is that, like you said, there's a lot of ways of doing it. I feel that one of the common mistakes that like rookies make when they're trying to teach is that they try to teach the perfect execution to a beginner student, which is never going to work. I always like to say, like, the statue of David wasn't made in one day,
Yeah.
right? Like you're not
Hmm.
going to chisel that masterpiece on that one student, and you can you can demoralize somebody by trying to get them to get perfection, and when they don't reach it, you're like, okay, and then I'll come to you later, and now
Yeah.
you just that person's spirit just dropped a little bit. And there's a saying we have an instructor training program, and one of the things we say is that your students either one step closer to the black belt or one step further,
Yeah.
and every
Mm.
day you teach. So obviously the goal is to get them closer every day. And one of the things is morale. You all know, like in the beginning, to keep those people in, you have to keep them happy. You have to keep them excited and motivated. So you can't be demotivating at any point. And I think one of the things to understand is that you're not going to get the perfect execution off the get-go. So like that has to be part of your teaching as well, which is if I'm going to show you, for example, a car engine or just even a car, and then I'm going to explain to you, this is how a car works, talking about every process, the engine, the combustion, hydraulics, you're never going to get the like idea of a car. It's just going to blow your mind away.
Yeah.
But if I show you a car, 4 wheels, vroom, vroom, like, okay, now, okay, a car is transportation. Good. That's day one. Then day two, like, okay, now we'll break down different parts of it. So for me, technique is the same way. Like if I'm going to teach an arm bar or something like that, let me get like for a beginning student, just the baseline view of what an arm to look like, right? And then next time around, okay, little details, because now you're ready for those little details.
Yeah.
You know, because you have something to work off of, and like continuing that journey. Like you don't learn an arm bar in 1-2 days, a week, a month. It's years. I know for me, double leg, I still learn things about double leg, right? So the misconception that there's like an endpoint to learning. You're like, no, you've learned some jujitsu, right? And you're going to continue to learn, you know.
But that's what makes it rich too. Like imagine if you were, you know, every white belt wants they want this right here. What's the best choke? What's the best sweep? What's the best takedown? But if we had that, imagine how incredibly boring it would be because everyone would
be too easy.
Thing. And then you close it down too, where you go, oh, this is it. This is how you do it. There's no other way of doing this. You can't, you know, adapt or change this move. Like, man, it'd be so boring. It's because it's constantly changing, and I think it's so enticing. And I I have this argument with people many times. I was always thinking about, you know, the future of jiu-jitsu. Is it a fad? I don't think judo is a fad. I don't think judo is going to go anywhere. I think it's established, and it will remain what it is for the next 100 years. Like they did it right. BJJ sometimes worries me because it's not as cohesive as judo is. But there is something about jiu-jitsu that I think that other martial arts perhaps lacks. It's precisely what we're talking about. It's not only has a very friendly and laid back culture, but the ability for everyone to insert something new in the technique makes it very engaging, very enticing, because now you have a canon of techniques that is the opposite of fixed. It is constantly changing. If you're not following, you're not keeping up, you're out of jiu-jitsu for 3 years, you're completely outdated. And that doesn't happen in other sports. You cannot wrestle for 5 years and you come back and it's like not that much has changed. I feel like because wrestling's been around for a lot longer, judo, same thing. But I feel like this, because it allows for so much, the possibilities through jiu-jitsu are endless. And like I was just talking to Keenan about this a while ago, and you know, he was doing something Muhammad Ali with it, but I still don't know what he's doing. He's got to show me someday because I don't know what he was doing. Like he's doing stuff with the lapel that I don't know what the hell he's doing. I have to. I'm sure I could understand if he broke it down to me, but it's just to give you an idea of how you blink and you get left behind.
Yeah. It's to put it back into video game terms for Dave, because you were talking about your massive video game. Is, you know, some of the most popular games out there, they call massive multiplayer online games. They're basically sandbox games is another way of thinking about it, where there's no primary objective and you can kind of do whatever you want in your world, like Grand Theft Auto kind of thing. You can go around jacking cars, you can make a gang, you can try to shoot down a helicopter, you know, whatever you want to do for the day. Those are some of the most engaging games because they have replay value. It's never boring, like you're saying. It's not just, well, I'm going to be drilling this leg drag for the next hour again, like I did yesterday. But also, it's another thing the gaming industry has done a really good job of is called DLC, downloadable content. So for jiu-jitsu, you go on Instagram and be like, whoa, what the hell was that move? Every day, there's more videos out there. It's like, oh, I've never thought of that before. Why haven't I thought of that before? You know, it keeps making it re-engaging, and the replay value, I guess you could call it, keeps going up.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It is like a game that doesn't get boring. Like it's not, you're always surprised. It's like, I think anything that is, you don't know what's on the other side. It's like sex will get boring very quick if you know what's happening when you get home. 9 o'clock, there's a routine to it, and then it just kills you, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you know. But if it's a novelty every time, it's like something different, or and you have that sort of energy with your partner, it just doesn't get old. It's just like, this is incredible, right? And we've all had both, so we know what that's like. And I think everything in life is like that. If it's there's something about not knowing, there's something about the excitement of the buildup and like a new experience every time, right? And jiu-jitsu in some ways, I guess, try to compare it to sex already looks like sex.
I'm letting you run with it. I want to see where you go.
It is like sex in a way, where it's more fun because if it's different every time. Oh man, my mind just went like a whole new.
Well, it's something to speak about jiu-jitsu. I think that, especially since we have you here on, it's something you haven't talked about, because I've been reading the book, you're in the Closed Guard.
Cool.
And the one thing I haven't seen yet is, where does the part come in about every 6 years that we're defending the planet against aliens? I haven't seen that part of the sword fighting and stuff.
Man.
Oh my God.
They teach it to the punch.
I know, man. Like one of my students made like a meme of like Nicolas Cage reading a Closed Guard book, and I'm like, yeah, you should. Why did you choose jiu-jitsu? They're ruining it for everyone. Like, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna get some kids that are gonna walk through the door looking for swords, or maybe Kid from Naga had it right all along, and he's been laying the ground for the Nicolas Cage jiu-jitsu movie, like handing out swords to all the kids. But yeah, man, I don't know what to make of that, bro. Like, why did they choose the word jiu-jitsu is what I don't understand. Someone showed me a screenshot because they messaged the official.
Yeah, I sent that to you.
Was that you? Okay.
Yeah.
And then he the explanation why, like, and I'm like, okay, let's assume that you do have sources for all those claims, and let's assume that that's true. That doesn't explain at all why you guys chose the title of that movie to be jiu-jitsu.
No.
You're shitting on our jobs. You don't understand that, right? Just took a gigantic crack on like 20 plus years of experience, like trying to do something for this sport, and you guys just come along and it's like aliens now.
In one move, they turned everybody who does jiu-jitsu into the guy online that goes, actually.
Yeah. No, and someone wrote something on my post like, man, Nicolas Cage has got to say no to some roles at some point. Like, he just takes any role you give him. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. No, man. It's like, dude, you're a famous actor. He's not a bad actor, man. Like, you know, he's got to have. He needs a better agent. I just don't know how else to say it.
That's funny. Yeah, this is. Read it? Nope. Do you got any notes? Nope. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I think that's exactly what he does. I think he's just looking at how much am I getting paid. I think that's the only number he's looking at. And maybe that makes sense. Maybe he's at the end of his career. I don't know. But like, I would have been more, more protective, I guess, of my career. He doesn't give a shit. But I think the end result
great for the memes, though.
I think the end result, though, will be positive. Because at the end of the day, I think it's people are going to walk through the door looking for it. I think it just makes it's just going to be disappointing. What is that? I was expecting that over there.
I was in the trades for a long time. One of my favorite expressions I took out of it was making honey out of bear shit. We'll make some honey out of this.
Yeah, I think it's funny that because I saw on the actual movie poster, it says the Ultimate Fighters will rise. I was like, the UFC might have something to say about that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I hope the UFC goes after them. Maybe they'll change everything.
Yeah, you can use Ultimate anything, and it's a problem,
And they're definitely building on that jiu-jitsu / UFC crowd.
Yeah. Or they're trying.
But they're not tricking anyone, because even like ignorant fans will be able to tell that there's no jiu-jitsu there. Like, everyone has an idea of what jiu-jitsu is now. It's not like 1980s when no one knew. Everyone has an idea of what jiu-jitsu is grappling today. Even, maybe your grandma doesn't, but, most people who have watched UFC at some point or like martial arts, which is who they're targeting, understand the difference between jiu-jitsu and ninjutsu.
I wonder if this is the way that karate and kung fu felt in the 70s, hitting the big screen. Like, we don't do that.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I know for them, actually, the movie like The Karate Kid was such an amazing thing for that industry, because it brought national attention to them, and like moms were enrolling kids all over the place. Like, it was one of the big booms in like karate. And then
I love the part with the aliens and the swords too. That was my favorite part of Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Might as well. I am watching Cobra Kai though. You guys seen it?
Yeah, I just finished the second
I saw
season.
some of it.
I limped through it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad. It's very corny, but it does bring
Yeah.
back a lot. They bring a lot back to the '80s, and I
Yeah,
like that.
it's heavy on the nostalgia, but really not great on the character acting.
No, but what I do like is that instructor, I forget his name, the Cobra Kai instructor.
The
He just
older guy,
talks so much-
Kreese.
Yeah, no, not that guy, but the main character.
Oh,
right?
yeah, Johnny.
Yeah, I just love how he talks shit to his students. I'm like, that's how I want to talk to my students. That's exactly how I want to talk to my students every day, but I can't.
You don't punch like that. You're not a pussy.
Pussy. What? They talk shit to you online? What a bunch of pussies. It's exactly how I feel about things. I'm that guy in some ways, I guess. Like fossilizing.
Well, I'm sure once this jiu-jitsu movie comes out, it's gonna give you a lot of memes.
Oh yeah, this is something that I revel in, good or bad. I can make that honey out of it. This has been a ton of fun, and I hate to be the guy to shut it down, but I got a class starting in about 10 minutes here.
No worries,
of
man.
course.
We gotta
you please plug yourself. I know you have a bunch of instructionals. Let the people know where they can find you.
So depending on when this podcast comes out, I've got a guard passing series that's about to drop in a couple days here. It's a companion to a guard retention series I did earlier this year in September, so they kind of vibe off of each other. It's almost like a bad marketing ploy. Like, we're going to show you how to retain the guard, and then we're going to show you how to smash it. So you can sort of pick your favorite part and go for that, or learn them both. And then, of course, like we were talking about, I've got the reverse Kimura from close guard and the reverse Kimura from half guard, which are both very popular. Thousands of people looking into that. And like anything, if you don't know the trick, you're going to get caught by the trick. So it's better to know it. So you can check those out at because-jitsu.com. Follow me on Instagram at because_jitsu.com, or just, at BecauseJitsu. And my personal page on Instagram is drew.weatherhead.
Awesome.
All right, awesome.
Very good. We'll make sure the good people know. Definitely check it out, guys, because just Drew was saying before, this is like DLC, right? Downloadable content. You got to add into your game if you want to get better. And, for sure, a lot of stuff you were highlighting, I think, particularly your approach to teaching and trying to draw out the unconscious will be a valuable tip for people out there. And I've seen a bunch of the video clips. It's all good stuff. So make sure to go ahead and check out Drew's content.
Awesome. Drew, thank you so much for coming on our show, man. I appreciate it. I haven't seen you in person in quite some time, but I'm sure we'll catch up at some time. And
once I can fly down to your country, I'll be there, man.
Absolutely. More than welcome. Come train with us. Come visit. And keep up the good work, man. I'm sure we will stay in touch. And I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man.
Bye, guys. Hope you guys have fun.